Stay. Hey there, welcome back. We're talking about side plank variations today. Why would you do a variation? So many reasons. Whether you're regressing it because you have tight muscles, a localized injury, or you're still working up to proper technique, that's awesome. There's so many benefits to doing any sort of regression for any sort of exercise. If you're progressing it, we can start looking at different focuses like glute, shoulder, center of mass, so dynamically changing that center of mass, or volume, or shortening the breaks. So many ways that we can change this to adapt to your needs. If you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to reach out. We have so many more answers than we can show in just one video.
The main points to look at for muscles that we're using in our side plank are going to be muscles of the core. If we look at muscles around the core, we're using our rectus abs. Those are the superficial six-pack abs, the washboard abs. Then we have our internal and external obliques. Those go sort of the next layer deeper. Those do some of our rotations, crunching, and resisting rotation. Then we're also going to have our transverse abs, TVA for short, TA for short. Those are our deep core muscles, which you've learned by now they're involved in pretty much everything. So a cool thing with the side plank is that there's an element of hip stability that comes in. So we are actually using our glute max, the big meaty, juicy part of the glutes, glute med as well, which is more of a stabilizing part of the glute that hits around the side of the hip. Then we're also looking at our shoulder, because that shoulder is part of what's holding you up. So we've got our lat working, our serratus anterior working, we've got our delt working, and even some of the little muscles that help stabilize the shoulder. We get a little bit of the mid and low traps working as well to keep the scapula in place. If you want an exercise that's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck, take a look at the side plank and we're gonna break it down for you here. So now that we know our mechanics of our plank, let's look at some variations. Our first regression is doing a double knee bent side plank. All our same mechanics apply where we're engaging the core, but being on the knees, it shortens our lever length. So for one, we're holding less weight on that bottom shoulder. So it's also great if you potentially have a shoulder injury, but also by being down on those knees, it's going to allow you to be a little bit more connected with your core. So you'll be aware of if those ribs are drawn down and the pubic bone is pulled up, so you have good stability, and then you can really focus on breathing through this exercise to own it. Our next regression, that is a little bit of a step up from the double knee bent option, is keeping the bottom knee bent and having your top leg straight. This starts getting you used to working with using that length from your top leg, but you still get the stability from the shorter position of your bottom leg. We still have the same challenges where we're going to work on connecting the core. It's going to take a little load off the shoulder, but it's going to be that next level up. Still use those basic principles. Make sure that core is working for you and you're creating some tension by squeezing your elbow to your hip. Next up from here, we're going to look at having both knees bent, but your top knee is actually going to be lifted off from your bottom knee. So in our plank, it's really helpful to have our legs together because we can squeeze and create tension and therefore create stability. When we lift one leg up, we're now losing some of that stability, and at the same time, you're going to get a squeeze on that bottom glute and on the top glute, and it ends up being like a little bit of a leg lift movement. So a really good way to add some extra tension to your plank while still getting used to loading your shoulder with that body weight. Our next variation that's going to be another step up is going to be on our one knee that's bent, but our top leg is going to be straight and we're going to lift it up. So by having that leg long instead of bent, we're going to be putting a lot more tension on the top of that hip, and then the core is going to have a harder time holding tight and holding stability with that extra weight pulling on it. We still get you used to strengthening the shoulder without your full body weight, but it's going to let you build up until you're strong enough to do the full plank. Our next variation is going to be a crossover plank. This offers a really great opportunity to balance out all the muscles that stabilize the hips. This includes our QL, which is one of our back muscles, our outer glutes, our glute med, and it's also going to work the inner thighs, the adductors. Those all need to work together to stabilize the hips. With this exercise, we're still following all our same mechanics. We're stacking our joints, aligning our posture, but this is still going to let us take some tension off of the shoulders, and it's going to let us feel out how our body needs to work together to hold us up. The next progression for our plank is going to be staggered. This is still one level lower than the initial plank we showed you, but it's still going to be quite tough. So the legs are going to be straightened, but instead of being stacked one on top of the other, we're going to stagger them so we have a wider base. A wider base gives us more stability. So the nice thing about this is we're still holding our full body weight now. So that shoulder is going to be taking a little bit more load. It's a great way to build strength there. But now you're going to have to make sure you've got your core in check because we're working with your full body length, your full lever length. So Jess is feeling her core working, feeling those shoulders working. Just thank goodness she has those super, super luscious, juicy forearms there to hold her up. All right, we're back where we started, right to our stacked, standard, not leg lifting, but that was a jazzy move, side plank. So just like we went over in our mechanics, lining the whole body up, using the core, putting all of our weight onto that shoulder and creating tension. She's looking good, working through all these planks. Oh, and so graceful too. Our harder variation for our side plank is the straight leg starfish. So this is going from the straight leg on the bottom. So Jess is going to be holding all of her weight here. And then she's going to lift that top leg straight out. So she's going to look like a mystical, magical starfish. But now she's really challenging the stability systems in her body. Especially when we lift that top leg up, her body's going to want to twist and almost break apart at the core. So this is where it's really important for her to drive her hips forward, keep that core connection. It'll make sure she's squared up, stacked with her joints, and lined up all the way through the lift. So for these side planks, we're still getting a great core workout, but we're going to put an extra test on the shoulder. So this allows our shoulder to build a lot of stability because we're keeping the arm fixed, but now the body is going to have to move around the shoulder capsule. So here we're doing a shoulder sink and push. So you can see Jess is dropping her weight into her shoulder, but she's still keeping it stable, not completely letting it flop up to her ears. And then to come up, she thinks about drawing the shoulder down and then pushing her forearm hard into the floor to create a lot of tension. A progression from this is going into our rotations, side plank, shoulder rotations. This is similar in the way that it acts on the shoulder, but instead of lifting up and down, we're going to rotate the body and then straighten it up. So she's actually controlling that rotation by pushing her forearm into the floor. She's closing off space at the shoulder there and then opening space when she comes up. She's still keeping her core connected the whole way through. So we can see that shoulder's getting really good rotation around the body. The shoulder wraps forward around the ribs and then comes back behind the ribs. This makes me want ribs. This is our side plank kettlebell hold to build shoulder stability into the plank. If you don't have a wiggly wobbly kettlebell at home, you can grab any object you have. A backpack is great, a water bottle, your pet, your loved ones, whatever you got. If you're starved for contact, hold on to your loved ones. What is that? A fan. Use your fan. So we're going to go into our side plank thinking about our stability, our alignment, all our objects in our house. And then we're going to pack the shoulder to get in position so we're not vulnerable to letting the shoulder roll. And then Jess is going to press that weight up and pop up into her plank. So here we have to make sure that shoulder is tight into the socket and we have all those little muscles around the rotator cuff holding it in place. And she's having to hold steady for a little extra tension on her shoulder while she works her core in her plank. She's looking at it too. That's good for the neck to look at your object. Our first option for a side plank to target our glutes is the bent knee hip dip. So we're still thinking about all our same mechanics for our strong side plank, but now we're adding a little shake to it, a little dip to it, a little hip fun to it. So you can see Jess is still extending her hips and aligning her joints, but she's going to let her hips lower to the floor and pop back up. You want to be very mindful that you're hinging from the hips and not curling from your rib cage or spine. This will make sure we get a little stretch on your glutes at the bottom and a little squeeze on your glutes at the top. Our next option for a glute focused side plank is a side plank clamshell or side plank bent knee leg lift. So we're still going to go from the knees, and for the clamshell, we're going to keep our feet together and we're going to rotate from the hip. This is a great way to get that extra little squeeze on the glute. It's a functional part of the glute that's really valuable to train. And when we train that and get it strong, it builds up the glutes really nicely. So the rest of Jess's body stays stable and she's working lots of mobility in that joint at the hip. Another option for this exercise is to still get that bent knee leg lift, but instead of keeping the toes together and rotating the leg at the hip, she's going to split those feet apart and pull apart and lift from the side of her hip. So we would call this an abduction, where we're abducting that leg away from the bottom leg. Again, all our same rules apply. Keep the rest of the body stable. Our last glute dominant side plank option is a side plank with a forward and back leg lift. Sounds like a hoot, doesn't it? So we're going to keep the bottom leg bent, and then we're going to take that top leg and sweep it forward, up, and back, and up, and forward, and up, and back, and up, and work it, and do it, and aerobics. And if you want to make this way harder and add an extra challenge, you can dance like Jess, or you can add a band around your knees. That's a great way to add some extra resistance that your glutes are going to have to strengthen against. Oh my gosh, how convenient that Jess had a band just right there. Like she didn't even know we were going to do this. I'm so glad she's always so prepared. So here we've got a band. Start with a light intensity if you haven't used one for this exercise before, and you'll build up a lot more tension around the glutes. And again, be very mindful that you're not moving from the low back. The movement should be happening from the leg when we're lifting. Work it. So here Jess has a Swiss ball. So if you're feeling kind of brave and very stable, you can give this one a try. Little bit of a warning. This one should only be done in a bent leg crossover stance or a staggered stance. It's going to be way too hard to stabilize if you stack your toes. So please don't hurt yourself. So Jess is going to set up with her elbow on the ball, and she's making that point of contact with her meaty forearm. So here we're going to do a rollout in our side plank. She has her leg crossed over for stability. She's lined up her joints, and now she's slowly thinking about reaching her elbow upward and then squeezing it back in, just like we would already squeeze our elbow back in doing our regular side plank. There is an element of shoulder stability in this one. So even though it's very challenging for the core because we're trying not to rotate, There's an element where we have to push the shoulder blade away, engage the serratus, engage the lat to control that movement and make sure we're able to focus on what the core is doing. So it's like a little chicken wing here. Nice chicken wing. Exactly, you can do a chicken wing, you can do this. Then our next core dominant option is a side plank reach to crunch. This is going to maximize a little bit more range of motion in the obliques. So Jess is still going to set up in our plank, thinking about all our wonderful rules that you might be tired of hearing by now, but they're so important, so we're going to keep talking about them. So she's going to get a really nice stretch from that whole top of her body, that whole lateral line, and then she's going to shorten that lateral line in her body. So this is a great way to work our core from the side through its full range of motion. It's great to time this with your breath, and we can inhale on the reach, exhale on the squeeze, so we maximize the core crunch. But again, we want to be really careful not to let the back arch, and we're just working through those appendages.
Well, you guys, you made it to the end of the video. We're so excited that you stuck with us this far. Please add us on social media at 3wave_fitness on all of the things except the ones that we don't do. You can also consider adding us on Patreon. It's a great platform for creators like us to get support so that we can continue doing what we love while you get something out of it too. You can either add for as low as $5, just access to our cool daily tips and tricks and things that we're not putting up on social media. You can see our outtakes, which I can tell you from this week, from this shot alone, there are tons. Further, we have all kinds of things like coaching calls that will help motivate you to keep going with your fitness quest. We've got programming that we can do for you so that we can help you to achieve your goals. And trust me, we'd love to see you there. So do consider going there. The link is in the description below or to the side or above, or I don't know, whatever platform you're using. Thanks so much. We love you. Stay safe. Stay awesome. We'll see you soon.